We are back and you're still watching In Frame. And we are still discussing the complex relationship between the DAP and PAS in Pakatan Rakyat. Before we went for the break, Dr. Zul, you were explaining about the not pursuing ideological...
I would like to again stress here that the way they look at us, Islamic agenda, Islamic State, Islamic agenda, Sharia. Now let me stress that when we come into 2008 March election, we came with a manifesto, PAS for all, and a manifesto that stresses on welfare, welfare for a welfare state, for all, an opportunity for all. So that does not make us less Islamic. If anything, it makes us more Islamic in the sense of embodying the substantive approach, an approach that really embodies the principles. And the principle principles of good governance, the principle of justice, that is very Islamic.
Yes, that was what was promoted during the 2008. Right. But at the same time, every time there is a little bit of needling. For example, if we were to take in the Kuala Terengganu by-election, a little bit of needling about the need to continue pursuing hudud laws or not, it brought a lot of discomfort. So it just takes a little bit of needling. That's my point.
Right. While I understand that, I must say that this is where we have come a long way to actually mutually respect one another. That very Islamic agenda, we leave it to for the future. In the sense of this is the common ground on which we work together. And we stress on the good governance, we stress on the issue of justice, we stress on the issue of giving well-being and policies that is cutting across race, culture, region.
I think the needling is perfectly fine. Yeah. It's perfectly fine because the two parties, in fact the three parties, are finding positions of equilibrium. Yeah. You will get times when certain things are raised that parties are not happy with.
Pointed out.
Yeah.
PAS is keeping the Islamic agenda for a later period. When it comes, wouldn't then it's not just about needling, it is about a clear direction of which the party would want to take. How do you then deal with it? I mean, the DAP is going to deal with it.
I think as far as we can see now, what PAS is doing, as far as we understand, is that they are embodying Islamic principles into their policies. We have absolutely no problems with that, as long as these principles are universally agreed principles of justice, good governance, and so on.
Are you agreeable with any attempt to, let's say, implement the hudud law?
That bit, I can say outright that we are not agreeable.
So, I mean, that again is the issue that we are talking about. Right. Would PAS then compromise and not want to pursue the hudud law if you get into power?
Fine. I think this is where we're really coming into to discuss and discuss this. We are an Islamic party, no qualms about that. We made it very clear. Raison d'être is Islam. Yeah. However, we are as well Islamic Democrats in the sense of playing to the rules of the game. Anything that we propose and advocate, it must be accepted by the voters, by the citizenry, and especially by our component, PR partners. So in that sense, we have that, built-in mechanism whereby our policies, no matter how you regard it as Islamic, it must go to the legislative process and the democratic process. That makes it democracy. Yeah. We are not imposing any of this. And this is a beautiful thing about the ability to manage all this dissent within the ambits of democracy.
That's the reason why I raised that issue. What if the Pakatan Rakyat get to rule the country after the 13th January election? It is also perceived that, or rather, every now and then also the needling will also come from PAS towards the ruling party of being un-Islamic, of not being able to implement Sharia laws and whatsoever.
Good point. Yeah. Let me remind you that this country practices dual or parallel implementation of the law.
Yes, the Sharia
of jurisprudence, civil and as well Sharia. So where we come from, insofar as it is still within the ambits of the federal constitution, still within the ambits of the legislative process, you can't say that is not democratic. This is a beautiful thing. See, this is how we come to define ourselves as Islamic Democrats, because we play to the rule of the game, we play to the rule of the law, we play to the constitution of the federal constitution, the constitutionalism of federal constitution. Therefore, in that sense, no matter how you see us diametrically opposed, for as long as we become Democrats, not going extra parliamentary, we are actually building a very viable coalition.
I understand what Dr. Zul is saying, but that kind of thought may not be prevalent in the much more Malay-dominated states. For example, in Kelantan, immediately after 1990, the efforts were made to implement the Hudo, to introduce or rather to stop the sale of liquor, or rather to reduce it to only being controlled, and to stop the what do you call it, license to premises for gambling. If again you guys get into power, what if PAS were to demand that or are you expecting them not to demand it?
No, I think what we are looking at in this is very simple. Even in Selangor, okay, where you're talking about sale of liquor, we have no objections to making sure that Muslims do not get access or to buy liquor, okay? But of course we will object if such access becomes throughout the state where nobody can get access to liquor. So I think we need to differentiate between the needs of the religion, which is to make sure that Muslims don't consume alcohol, as opposed to making it an outright ban to all. So I believe that there are ways to resolve these issues that gives rise to satisfaction for all parties.
But that is about liquor. But what about gambling? Like in the case in Kelantan, they totally stopped issuing premise licenses to the outlets which were selling or rather which were operating gambling opportunities.
I think that's where the issue of democracy comes into the picture. When you are voted there, and then if the country, for example, say in a hypothetical scenario, okay, it comes a day where the entire population in Malaysia, okay, agrees to a constitutional change and change the nature of this country. Now, in that scenario, we would have lost the elections, and we have no say in the arrangement. So I think the part of the beauty about the democracy is that dictates what the parties can or cannot do. And while we are in a coalition, then we work within the framework that the electorate wants us to work on.
At the same time, for PAS, it has been perceived, or rather, it has been discussed. I wouldn't use the word perceived, just in case it may be wrong. But it has been discussed that PAS is compromising its Islamic pursuits ever since it had to pander to its partners in Pakatan Rakyat, especially the DAP.
I wouldn't call it compromising. I would like to use the word contextualizing. There are again, strategy and I think it's just not about political expediency here. It's just not convenient of marriage or convenience. It's all not that. It is as well imbibed and enshrined in the wisdom of Islamic jurisprudence, that we know how to put in place, the demands and the demands of the situation. And that is very Islamic. And there's an Islamic legal magazine that says that every strategy must be contextualized to the interest, the bigger interest, the larger interest, the public interest. So in that sense, I don't think we are at all being compromising. And I can tell you safely that in the Quran, that there are numerous verses that talks about governance, good governance, al-isti'mar, al-istikhlaf, al-adala. These are all Islamic principles, timeless and universal Islamic principles. I don't think you are compromising.
Okay, we will have to take a break again. Stay tuned and we will be back shortly.